Yeah, 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 yeah. Step into the bayou where the chatter gets wild. Truth served fresh with a wink and a smile. From gators to gumbo, it's a party. Let's sing. Welcome to the show. It's Bada Bing. We got flavors of the South with a 90s vibe. Stories roll deep and the beats arrive. Grab a seat, feel the heat, let the good times flow. It's the Bayou Jammin', ready, set, go. Bada Bing, Bayou. The stories unfold where the swamp's alive and the truth is bold. Tune in, lean in, the vibe's so dope. Bayou beats in your ear, we the crew you'll quote.
Ciao tutti.
Or as we say in Louisiana, hey y'all.
My name is Patrick Ross Campisi.
And I'm Lawrence Joseph Ingraffia.
And you are listening to
the Bada Bing Bayou podcast.
Lawrence, we're back at it again with yet another distinguished guest. I'll let you do the honors.
Oh, certainly. So today we are joined by the one and only Tony Cortello. He is a board member and lifelong member of the Italian American St. Joseph Society. And he is the guy who runs and is a part owner of Mid-City Pizza in New Orleans' Mid-City neighborhood.
I will say that is probably the best pizza in New Orleans. And we'll get into why that is, because there's some little secret magic going on behind the scenes. But Tony, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Ciao, everyone.
Ciao, ciao, ciao. Well, let's dive into it a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about your background. You're a Sicilian, Louisiana born and raised. Tell us a little bit about your history, how your family came over, and what got you where we are today.
Both my grandfather's families came from Sicily, a small town called Poggioreale. My father's side, about 1898. My mother's side, I believe, a little bit after that, if I'm not mistaken, and settled in New Orleans. My mom's family settled in Mid-City. Dad's family settled in the Irish Channel for the most part. And been here since, very dedicated to this community. They my father's deceased. My mother still loves to go into the city and see what's going on. And so we've been here. Father owned restaurants as well. And really just love the culture of the city. Mm-hmm. So here I am. I own a restaurant as well, and moved away for a little while, and now starting to get back into it, and been a lifelong member of the St. Joseph Society, formerly the Italian American Marching Club. My father was one of the charter members, and loved it dearly, and passed that love on to myself. My nieces are past queens. I mean, they do anything they can to help the club. So it's definitely a family affair.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. So Tony, with this long-standing, tradition of, participation in the St. Joseph Society and everything like that, certainly that was influenced by your family, as you just said. So where in New Orleans did you grow up, and, what were some of those experiences you had that kind of shaped you and, made you want to get more involved, with the culture?
So I grew up in Metairie, and from the time I was little, I loved parades. Loved them. I still love them to this day. But the Italian parade was always so much different. I just wanted to be on the street with my older cousins and my older brothers and my father. Marching in a tuxedo was always so cool to me as a young kid. And when I was 13, that was the time that my mom felt I was old enough to carry the banner through the French Quarter, and started there. And then, we had a very typical Italian American family I grew up in. Mother and father worked very, very hard. Their only goal was to make sure that we all had a better life than them, a little bit easier than they had it. And they didn't say much about it, but they just did it by example. Mm-hmm. And so you kind of start to realize is, maybe you're 17, 16, something that I liked always was history. And so as you get a little bit older, maybe you start reading a little bit history about where you come from and how that translates into your daily life, and not really knowing it, I guess, at that age, but kind of seeing different things. And I really enjoyed the history behind Italians coming here and just working hard and getting ahead. All the Italians I knew were, lawyers, they were teachers, they were doctors, successful businessmen. And they never really said, look at me. They just got up and did it.
Right.
And I love that. And so that kind of got me really interested in the culture. Where does that work ethic come from? Where does that mentality come from? And I can only go back to just the humble beginnings of wanting a better life. And that kind of got me interested in the culture of maybe as at young, 'cause I like to work. I always enjoyed working, especially when it was at my family's restaurant. There was always a brother there, a sister. My sister would be there. My dad, cousins, lots of families like we grew up with and played sports with. Their families were there working too, and so it was always fun. Like it was just fun to work in that environment. And so you take that then with the parade, which was a big deal to my father. My oldest brother Daryl is a past president as well. My younger brother Dante is on the board, and so we always made that a family event. It was just one of the funnest weekends. So you want to see it continue. You want to pass that fun on to other Italian Americans who might want to enjoy themselves in a culture that they didn't know was maybe their grandparents partake in. Now they get the opportunity to do it. So that's been kind of my catalyst for it. First, it was fun. Then it was kind of, I want to be with my older brothers and cousins on the street, and da da da. And then you do it and you're hooked. And then you want to make sure you can preserve it.
Yeah. Especially at this point, we just had an episode with Ashley and Juliana, some of your colleagues with the St. Joseph Society, and we were talking about that after the tragedy that happened in New Orleans New Year's Eve last year. I mean, all of the organizations, but most importantly, the St. Joseph Society really got hit with just extra fees and extra expenses that came from that. Now is the time that we really need that support.
Yeah, and it's also, sometimes you have that. You're dealing with COVID. People broke that habit of going to the parade every year. Now you gotta reinvent yourself and go after and remind people that we're still here, we're still relevant, and we want you to come back and be part of our organization. And that's a very real thing that all of our habits change from COVID. You see it in everyday life. So those are things that we're now, as every organization, no matter what, is dealing with as well. So you had Katrina, we had to rebuild after that. That was, took some years, and we were starting to see the routine of families coming back to the parade. Now you take a 2-year hiatus, now you're back again fighting those battles and really trying to make it known that we're out here. Last year, the calendar kind of worked against us because Mardi Gras was so late. So we only had about, it may have been 12 days later, we had our parade.
Yeah.
That's tough. So
That is tough.
It's tough, but I also think it's an opportunity for us to really say, okay, this is the new field we have to play on. Let's do it. And I think you've seen that from our club, from all the members, all the board members who have said, okay, we got to do this, this, and this a little better. We have to do this, this, and this a little different to go out and attract and to let people know we're still here. And you've seen a wonderful push from our board, and you've seen a wonderful push in our membership, coming up nicely. So it's good. Sometimes you need that.
No, you definitely do.
Yeah.
So what does that look like, Tony? Growing the organization and being, more involved in the growth of the Italian American, Sicilian American community in Louisiana as a whole.
Well, for me, there's a few avenues to go down. Obviously, social media is the most effective way to get your brand out there, whether it's business, whether it's a school. I mean, Lane Kiffin with LSU is tweeting every 5 minutes. I don't think he's doing it because he likes it. I think he's doing it because he knows that's what young people look at, social media. It's the way it works today. So we've made a very big push in that. We've invested in our website to really bring it up to today's standards so that we can make it more accessible and just modern. that's an easy route, I think, because people know that and people can do that. The harder route, but you have to do it, is reaching out to businesses across the country, not just local. Our local businesses are the ones who know about us, who supported us over the years, and it's wonderful that we've built these relationships. However, when I lived in New York, and I was not involved, but I went to a lot of Italian festivals, it's the same sponsors at the same events going after the same people. So I believe here we are the biggest. I don't believe, I know we are the biggest St. Joseph's event in the country.
Mhm.
Okay. That is, according to Chat GPT, who's a lot smarter than me, gave me the numbers on it. I don't have them in front of me right now, but we are the largest event in the country, St. Joseph's Day. I believe we have a valuable targeted audience for corporate sponsorships to say, look at this. We have the biggest event that has people from the New York area, from Chicago, from Las Vegas, from Texas, from Florida, from Mississippi. I mean, you go through
International too.
Oh yeah.
yeah. I mean, even we have the Italian flag throwers come every year. So we have a very easy market for corporations to come in and say, let's help these clubs. Let's show them our product. You have a whole market here that I believe is neglected because a lot of people don't realize it. John Viola has done a good job of trying to highlight different areas of the country.
Certainly.
And some other YouTubers have as well. I know there's a lot of other guys that do it as well. And that's wonderful. But when I'm in the restaurant business, as he stated, and I deal with companies, domestic companies, who don't realize when I tell them, I send them all our stuff for our Italian parade. Oh, I didn't know it was that big of a Sicilian community in New Orleans. It's like, well,
That's always their response.
yeah. Well, now you do. What's your excuse for helping out?
Yeah.
That's what I feel like. But it's a great history too. I mean, it's living history. And that's
Definitely
the part of it that, as an Italian community here, I think we need to do a better job of telling.
Oh, certainly.
One of my biggest pet peeves is the lack of recognition that the Italian musicians get that came from this era. When jazz was going, there's a lot of influences of Italian American artists, a lot of influences of Sicilians here in New Orleans that gave a lot to that. We don't get any recognition. Nothing.
Yeah. I think we're in that era now, though, where we are finally getting that information out. I mean, I've said this countless times. I grew up in Baton Rouge, studied Louisiana history my whole life. Never once did I hear about the mass lynching in New Orleans until 2019.
Yeah.
Right. And my family immigrated in 1890 into New Orleans right before the lynching happened. Some family was still there.
I find amazing.
Still, yeah, that they even want to.
10 years after that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's something that needs to be taught, and it was just suppressed for so long. But we're getting to that point. I think the momentum is the pressure is so much so tangible that it had to burst, and now it is. And we have stuff like IFL who are bringing in so many young Italian Americans who attended last year. Lawrence did a wonderful job of wrangling up about a dozen people from across the country to come for San Giuseppe for the parade. And
I was happy to do it.
We've got more people coming this year too. So I've said this with a few other organizations that I think that this decade is like the resurgence for Italian American pride. The 70s was the heyday, and I think we dipped down, but I think we're coming back up.
The pendulum is swinging back.
There's a lot of encouraging signs, and that's something that when we discuss our Italian club here in New Orleans, that I make it a point about all the positive recruitment we're doing, the positive people that we now have that are all looking at one thing and one way to grow our club and to have more recognition for us.
For those people who may be local, have never been to the St. Joseph's Society Parade, or if they're coming from out of town, what should they expect? What do they get as being a member? How should they prepare? All of that.
So I would say any parade you've ever seen on TV, forget it. It's totally different. It's nothing like you've seen. That's the first thing. The second thing is it is as much as a moving drinking fest as it is singing and dancing for about 2 miles. And it is also, to me, it's so hard to explain it because I get people all the time. So tell me what it's like. I don't know how to say it through the eyes of someone new, but I just go by what people tell me who do it for the first time. And they all say the same thing. I'll never miss it again.
Yeah.
It is as much interaction and as much socializing with people you don't know, with people you've never met, may never see again, who are on the street, and you're going to love each other and you're going to have a wonderful time. And then you'll meet people in the club who hopefully part of our strategy moving forward is to make it not just a parade organization, but a social organization, a networking organization. That's a very important part and aspect of our club going forward, is to have events so that, we meet people from Baton Rouge who have the same likes as we do, who want to see our culture grow, who want to see more people involved, so that in 10, 20 years, you're hearing about the good side of Italian culture as much as you're hearing about the tough side as well. And I think the media and the portrayal is very different than what really is. And that's it's a shame because we as Italian Americans have given so much. As I remind a lot of people, World War II, go look at the numbers of Italian Americans that died.
Oh, that's
It's a
right.
staggered amount. When I lived in Little Italy in New York, in Manhattan, they had a plaque of all the guys just from that neighborhood that passed away in world wars. It's unbelievable. And you can still go see that plaque today.
And that's something I was just going to say, that's just something that Patrick and I have talked about, on this podcast before when we were talking about Italian Americans in cinema and our portrayals, is that, typically people associate Italian Americans, Sicilian Americans with organized crime, when in fact it was like 1% or less of the entire population was involved in that element of society. Meanwhile, they overlook all of the contributions that Italian Americans and Sicilian Americans have made to this country. And they, like you just said, they significantly overlook the fact that Italian Americans, broad term, Italian, Sicilian, wherever they came from, but that was the largest ethnic group that served during World War II. And how quick people are today to forget about stuff like that.
Yeah. And that's a point of contention, that between that and the lack that we talked about the influence of jazz, that are very much, they're great stories there. There's wonderful stories. There's wonderful people who've contributed, but there's also the lack of respect, if you want to call it that, is something that I find a little frustrating at times. But I also make it a point to talk and to say about the positive influences that we have, and the things that are going on now today, that are reshaping the Italian American experience.
I think that's from the conversations we've had, whether it be people of our demographic or even older generations, is especially with Italians, this is a big thing, is that Italy looks forward, Italian Americans look to the past, because that's all we have. We didn't grow up in Italy. We didn't have everything that Italians have. That's like our promised land to go back to. But we hold on to what we have from our grandparents, our great-grandparents, great for me. But we also need to be looking forward, because there's so much that's happening in Louisiana, across this country, with Italian Americans, Sicilian Americans, the impacts that they're having, all of the productive things that they're doing and contributing to society. There's so much that, yeah, we need to obviously preserve our heritage and history, but let's, like you're talking about, let's start networking with our own community and continue to further this progress that we've done for the past 100 years in America. Let's do it again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you brought up an interesting point about being second generation, third generation, whatever it may be. And one of those reasons I stay involved is because there's someone who I've never met who made one of the biggest sacrifices of their life and decisions of their life to leave on a ship, to arrive on Canal Street or at the port in Waldenburg Park where they have the monument to the immigrant.
Oh yeah.
No
Beautiful
other
monument.
reason than to make sure that someone other than him or her had a better life.
Mm-hmm.
That's very important. Okay, when you get up and complain about work, when you get up and whatever, you have to do what you got to do. I get it. Sometimes it's more difficult. But when you think about what the alternative is, yeah, life's pretty good.
Yeah.
And
Well,
those are the people that I think it's important to make sure you keep the heritage going.
and I think you and I, Tony, actually can share a similar perspective in this. And soon Lawrence will. I think next year he's got something planned. But when I went back to Sicily, I went to Poggioreale, Gibellina, Salaparuta, all where my family comes from. And I went to the old town. And those who don't know, in 1968, there was a massive earthquake that hit all of those towns in the Belice Valley. And Poggioreale basically was not destroyed. Gibellina was destroyed, but Poggioreale really got hit. They got displaced, had to go live in metal buildings for almost a decade as they built a new city because it was uninhabitable. Going back, seeing everybody loves Sicily, especially after White Lotus. Everybody loves to visit there. They think it's amazing, and it is. But it puts in perspective, you can be in this beautiful paradise, if you will, but it was so bad for them at that point that they needed our ancestors. They made that decision to leave everything that they had, go to a foreign country where they didn't speak the language and nobody really wanted them there anyway, to take that sacrifice, and look where we are now. I mean, it's such a unique perspective.
It's amazing when you get on a plane and go for, 7-8 hours to Rome, and then you then you get to Palermo and your back hurts and it's tight and you're complaining because your luggage is taking forever and you just want to sit down. And then you go against people that 110 years ago or whatever decided to get on a ship and go. Think about that.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, when you first, whether it was you first landed in Palermo and the tarmac and you got the giant rock, the mountain sitting there, or when you first got to Poggioreale, what was that first experience like for you?
It was, my parents had been back multiple times and I've always heard about it. And I've always said I wanted to go. And it was a bunch of different feelings, but you're walking through, and the only, I'm thinking about it now. That's a great question. It's the first time someone's asked that question, but now I remember walking through and you don't feel like you're walking alone.
Mm-hmm.
You have obviously other people with us, but more than that, you feel like you're looking in these buildings that you knew your ancestors walked through.
Mm-hmm.
They lived there possibly. And when you do that, you have this, for me, I had a very, almost an experience where you feel someone's walking with you or that you don't know, but you do know,
Mm-hmm.
Who that might be. And you've never
It just feels like home.
Yeah. It's just, I had the pleasure of staying at Signora Pietra's house. And it was, I mean, she treated me like I was a nephew,
Mm-hmm.
just wonderful, wonderful experience.
In my upbringing, I grew up in White Castle, small little town. There's a lot of it's actually Sicilians that moved there. My family's had been there since 1927, 1929, and we stayed there still to this day. But my grandfather, he always brought us up saying, we're Poggioreale, we're from Poggioreale, we're Sicilian. And I honestly thought it was just my family. Like, it's a small town, earthquake hit it. The Campeses are the only ones that are from that town. Didn't realize that there's Poggioreale everywhere. To expand upon that, there's people from every one of these little towns. There's the Contessa Antolina Society down in New Orleans, Cefalatana Society, huge organization, 150 active members just in South Louisiana. But there's so much of our paisani that are walking right next to us every single day, and we don't even know that. So I think what we're doing with the podcast and with social media now, with stuff like keeping the parade alive, that's like an amazing way to connect people who could be long lost cousins.
One of the cool things I think has happened over the last, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years, probably actually since Hurricane Katrina, I think people have made it a point of having their St. Joseph's altar, which has been, I mean, I remember as a kid, I knew about them just from the club, that I knew what they were. And maybe, one or two people had them. Now every church has them. So many organizations are doing them, Italian and non-Italian are doing them, and it's wonderful. I mean, there are people that come in town from all over the country just to come see the St. Joseph's altars here in Southern Louisiana.
Oh yeah.
Tony, I think you're right about that, because I spent 2 years in Lafayette working and getting my MBA. And while I was there, I remember going to mass one Sunday at the cathedral in downtown Lafayette. And then, as I'm walking out, there's this old Cajun French lady who I don't know from Adam, but she's like, "Oh, excuse me, young man, but would you like to come look at our St. Joseph's altar?" And I had no idea what was going on. I mean, I'm in the heart of Acadiana, and I know we have people out there, but I'm thinking to myself, like, well, what could these little Cajun French people know about constructing a St. Joseph's altar? And sure enough, they did. They had it off in like the little auxiliary gym next to the school between the church, and it was a beautiful altar. And that's kind of when kind of opened my eyes a little bit, that like, yeah, I mean, I know we're elsewhere, in the Northeast, we're in Chicago, we're in Florida, we're on the West Coast, but I mean, hell, just an hour and a half up the road in Lafayette, Louisiana, they're holding it down. They're honoring St. Joseph's.
And that's another tradition that is, when I moved to New York was the first time I kind of realized that not everyone is from Sicily who's Italian.
Right.
95% of us are Sicilian, and that was funny, But
so
I love the St. Joseph's altars. It's so much fun.
So talking about you being up in New York, let's dive in a little bit about what brought you up there, and then really what you brought back, because you're all busy as all get out now with your work.
I had partly through our Italian club and some other friends, a good social structure in New York. And I had been in New Orleans my whole life and just kind of wanted, I really enjoyed going to visit up there. Always loved going to New York and was doing it a lot at that time. And I kind of said, I want to see if I can live up there. So thought about it for a while and then got a job offer with a restaurant group up there. And I was like, well, it's now or never. If you're going to do it, you better go now or put that dream away and don't do it. And I just thought not doing it was not really an option, So moved up there. That was 2017 and really enjoyed it. David Greco, Joe Chippery come in for the parade every year from New York and a great friend of mine, a guy by the name of Adam. I was with those guys a lot, and they were my family up there. And it was really a unique experience. I would go to the Bronx and hang out on Arthur Avenue probably once a month. And then I ended up, it wasn't even, it was kind of by luck. I was looking to move an apartment. I was living in Manhattan, Upper East Side Manhattan, and an apartment that had everything I wanted was on Mulberry Street in Little Italy in Manhattan, and moved there. And it was you talk about feeling like you were at home. I mean, I still talk to probably 5 or 6 people that lived on that block or that worked on that block, whose families had been there for generations. And I still talk to them. Hugged them yesterday. I had one of them yesterday.
That's
And just a
amazing.
wonderful experience. And that was really cool. That was when I realized our club here in New Orleans was not on an island. Sometimes we all feel like our clubs are on an island. And I would talk to people. I knew these people for 6 months maybe, and we started talking about different Italian clubs. And it was like being around cousins every day.
Mhm.
And their clubs are facing the same problems our clubs. Most of the families are no longer in Manhattan. Very few of them are, as a matter of fact. They're in Long Island, they're in New Jersey, they're up north in Westchester County and things like that. And so how do we keep our clubs intact? It's the same battles. And a lot of the Italian neighborhoods are changing, but they're not gone. There's still Italian merchants there. That was one of the biggest things that I noticed. And I would tell them, like, guys, you still have a great Italian community here. I know it's not 2 square miles of what it once was when you were growing up, but you still have a wonderful stretch of stores and families that live here that are generational, that have given us so much to those communities. And so
You got to
that was
support
really
them.
cool. But it was funny because I was like, guys, you're complaining about the same thing the clubs in New Orleans.
So, Tony, what would you say was the biggest thing you learned from your time in New York? Like the biggest takeaway? I know you learned a lot because, I mean,
Yeah.
South Louisiana guy going
The
to New
Italian
York.
community perspective, I would say, the thing that I mentioned about we're all battling the same issues, how to keep the clubs relevant when, you go back and I would love to live in an Italian neighborhood, a social club where we all got together once a week, had a drink, watch a ball game, and our families could play, right? But that doesn't exist. It's not the way life is anymore. So instead of worried about what we lost, let's try and figure out how we can sustain what we do have. That was something that every club is bad. Every Italian neighborhood is bad. So I would say that was a very, it was interesting to say the least, and it kind of made me feel like, okay, our club here in New Orleans is battling the same challenges that all the other clubs are. Now I kind of figured out that's actually when I started to get a little more vocal and involved in our club here in New Orleans, because it was very important. Like, guys, we're not the only club that's battling this. We got to figure this out, And then up there, I was invited to do a lot of things with Italian Americans up there that I really were great. I worked in San Gennaro Feast for a few years when I lived up there, which was so much fun. Got to go to the Dante Alighieri Society in New Jersey with my buddy Andrew. Went and did a lot of things with David Greco and Joe Chippry. We would go to different things. So that was really cool. The other difference too is this. I feel here in Louisiana, we're Louisiana and American and then Italian, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Okay? I think, Lawrence, you may have used that term last time we spoke, and I thought that was a great way of putting it. Where, one of the cool things I love about New Orleans cuisine is that there's so many different cultures that have put their hand in the pot, so you can say. You have the English, the German, the Spanish, the Africans, the Italians, the Creoles, of course, and the French, and I mean, just so many different. But they all kind of adapt and put their little take on it. Whereas in other cities, they hold on to their traditions from their home country so much that sometimes I think it's paralyzing. I find in New York specifically, where I live, it was almost a competition to see who could be more authentically Italian.
Yeah.
And it used to bother me because I'm like, well, I didn't grow up in Italy. I grew up in New Orleans. I grew up in America. We did meatballs. We did, this type of dish, that. I get people today, well, that's not how they do it in Italy, talking about the pizza shop. I'm like, you're right. I'm an American neighborhood pizzeria. I'm not in it.
Boom.
I want that. And I'm very proud to do that. I make it a point when people ask me, oh, it's an Italian restaurant. I'm like, no, it's not. When I open up an Italian restaurant, you'll know it. This is an American neighborhood pizzeria. Whereas in New York, not all, but many of them are almost handcuffed by keeping that authenticity, so to speak, quote unquote, or at least they want to stay within the lines and not get too far out of them because they're worried about what other people may think.
Yeah. I think that's one of the big issues we've talked about on the podcast and just in conversations from IFL and other organizations is our culture, maybe just our way of being as Italians or Sicilians is we do have a little bit of pride and everybody wants to be the most Italian guy in the room, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it's almost like they're projecting authenticity, but they're not being authentic to themselves or who they are, you know? And that was always an interesting experience for me coming from Louisiana, going to New York, Chicago, all these Italian hubs, enclaves. I'm like, all right, my upbringing was entirely different. We didn't do the Feast of the Seven Fishes. We call it gravy, not sauce. All these little nuances that's like, am I Italian enough to even be in this room? But at the end of the day, I got the blood running through me. It doesn't make a difference if I'm an 1/8% or 100%. You're still Italian.
And that was something that sometimes in other cities like the ones you mentioned, you get that a lot, and I've just got to the point where, it doesn't bother me. I grew up in a very traditional Italian Catholic home. We were raised in New Orleans. So yes, we ate a lot of boiled crawfish. My family had a seafood restaurant growing up. So we were a lot of shrimp and things that, probably they don't eat in New York. And I'm very happy about that. About very proud, I should say, not happy, but proud of what we do here. And I also think too, going back to your original comment about not understanding the mass lynchings that were happening, the Tallulah 7 as well, where they have a plaque in Cefalù about the 7 Cefalutana guys who were hung in Tallulah, Louisiana. Okay, you can go to Cefalù today and see that plaque.
Yeah.
And maybe they were a little bit shy about projecting how Sicilian they were. Maybe it was a little bit rougher climate. I doubt you had people really wanting to help them out on a large scale. So, yeah, maybe they let those traditions die outside of the home. Maybe they let themselves be a little bit less worried about having an all Italian neighborhood because they just want to go to work and have a better life. Whereas in bigger cities, maybe they had a little bit more quote unquote protection, but in the long run, I think you were better off maybe learning the traditions of your new home a little quicker. Also, in bigger cities, you've had a lot more continual Italian immigration as well.
Yeah, certainly.
So I think there is also, and it was easier to get to Italy, let's face it. So you had more goods brought in from overseas that you had access to that you may not have had here. You had easier trips back home. And then you had more immigration coming as the years progressed.
Yeah. One thing Lawrence and I have talked about, because he grew up in, Hammond area. So is that you got Tangipahoa Parish and Hammond's in what?
Tangipahoa Parish.
Tangipahoa Parish.
Yes, sir.
But in certain areas, as recent as the 60s, 50s, 60s, Sicilians weren't, I don't know if they weren't physically allowed. They certainly weren't welcome in a lot of these areas. So people were like, I'm either not going to go there. I'm not going to project it. Like you're saying, I just want to make my life better for myself and for my family. And we'll do the stuff in the house, but those traditions die out.
Right. And, also, with immigration being such a hot topic today, I think, one of the ways our community could really help this without getting too involved in whatever way you want to talk about it is, look, we are now the example for newer communities who are coming here. Like it or not, but Italians are business leaders. We are as much involved in civic duties and every other community as possible. Whereas, 50 years ago, that might not have been the case. And so it took a few generations, but here we are. And that is something that we, as a club, as our club, really, um, that's a way to promote not only our club and members, but also to let people know that we're still here, we're thriving, and we can be looked at as the model for newcomers to our wonderful country here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And you're, I think, a testament to that. You've now owning you're a business owner. You've got your because I do want to highlight this. You've got Mid City Pizza in New Orleans. What inspired you to want to do that? I know you took some of your knowledge that you gained in New York, New Jersey, and running pizzerias, running restaurants, but like what makes Mid
No,
City what it is?
so it's an interesting story. I grew up in the restaurant business, and the restaurant business can be one of the most grueling businesses on. It's the stupidest business model.
The stupidest business model.
It is. It makes no sense whatsoever. There's no residuals. There's, you can have a law firm and rent a nice space, and then you either outgrow that space or you downsize. You call your clients, hey, our new office is 3 streets over, da 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 da. Or you call your clients, hey, we had a death in the family. I'm gonna be out for about a month to deal with this. Email me, we'll get back to you. In the restaurant business, you can move across the street and restaurants fail just because they move to the opposite side of the street.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you have a loved one, God forbid, pass away, and you want to take 3 months off to get, and your staff doesn't run it properly or whatever may happen, and you're out of business, and you've been there for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's stupid. And why am I in it? I don't know. But I love it. That's why I'm in it. And more importantly, so my family's in the restaurant business. When I moved to New York, I was out of the business for a little while. When I moved to New York, I knew the quickest way for me to get a job was back in the restaurant business.
Mm-hmm.
So took a job as a general manager of an Italian restaurant in Brooklyn. Was there for a little bit, but I was living in Manhattan. And they had a job opening for a general manager / director of ops for a pizzeria in Grand Central Station. So I went to the interview and had a great interview with the owner's consultant, guy by the name of Giorgio Collage, one of the best guys I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And he, decided I would be a great fit for their pizzeria. And when I started working in pizza, I loved doing it. It was really cool, but I kind of just fell in love again with the restaurant business. And it was really interesting because I'd always made pizza at home. I graduated from culinary school, so I was very comfortable in the kitchens of my father's restaurants and throughout my life. But I always at home would love to cook Italian American dishes. That's what I would love to do. That was kind of my little hobby. And so started making pizza and just really enjoyed everything about it. I like the fact that we're dealing with products that take a lot of thought. People don't realize time and temperature when you're making pizza from scratch is very important. So you have to be on top of it daily. If you aren't on top of it daily, you can really make for a hard life with making dough and just the whole aspect of it, dealing with a lot of simple ingredients, but we use organic ingredients at the restaurant. So, we use seedless oils, things like that just were important to me. And I had the chance to work with Donatella Arpaia as well. And she was very committed to using high quality ingredients. And it just fit well. So I was in New York. We had a pizzeria in Grand Central and a pizzeria in Times Square. I kind of bounced back, but mostly was at Grand Central, then opened the one on Times Square. And then COVID hit. When COVID hit, as all of us kind of had to take a step back and reevaluate what our goals were. At that point, I said, I'm tired of running other people's places. Maybe it's time to get back into ownership. I also have a rental property management company as well. And that was doing well. So I focused a lot on that. And I stepped away from the pizzerias in New York. My father's health was declining. So I knew I wanted the ability to travel back and forth so I could come home and visit. Started doing that. And then had an opportunity arrive in New Orleans about buying Mid-City Pizza.
Mhm.
And it looked good. And, I just had a good feeling about the place. The location's great, but the neighborhood is wonderful. You have it's every walk of life there. Our little corner that we own, I call it the All American corner because you have a burger spot across the street, you have a bar across the street, you have a barber shop across the street, you have a breakfast place behind me, you have a breakfast place across, you have a mechanic shop across the street, you have a high school up there. It's like everything you need is on
Mhm.
this one little corner and up the street.
Mhm.
So it was just a cool corner, a good place. And it felt right. And I knew, at that point, my father has been deceased for a while, about 8 months, I think, when we made the deal, and maybe 18 months actually. And so I was ready to do it on my own for business reasons. I was ready to do it on my own for personal reasons. And then when I walked in the space for the first time, I just saw something there because I looked at other pizzerias and they didn't fit. This one
Mhm.
fit. And we opened up in March of 2024. So almost 2 years, which is hard to believe. And it's been a great experience. I still get up every day excited to go to work.
Hmm.
That is something that you cannot fake in the restaurant industry if you're excited to be there. I love it. I'll probably go back tonight after this interview. I don't have to
Heck
Mhm.
yeah.
go back there. I like the space. I invite people to come sit there and enjoy themselves. It's a really great thing when you go to your own business and you enjoy being there.
Mhm.
You enjoy
That's it.
meeting people. And that's
One
been the joy of it.
one thing that I'm looking forward to, I have yet to have it. Lawrence was just telling me the Sicilian pie that you got.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
So
I
dude.
I need on.
my
That's it, like
favorite.
the sfincione.
Yeah, kind of.
So yes, it is. I don't do the traditional sfincione because
Mhm.
I don't know how many people locally would want to have anchovies and onions.
Yeah.
But
I would.
yeah, I think for St. Joseph's Day around in March, I'm going to do
Mhm.
one and see if it takes off.
Okay.
I've been playing with that idea for a while. I'm not going to put it on the menu every day because I have a feeling I'll have a little more weight.
Yeah.
But I've really Peter Gilberti keeps bothering me about putting the sfincione on with the traditional,
Mhm.
and but I think I'm going to do that around St. Joseph's Day this year. But I love the Sicilian pies, and if
Mhm.
we do them, it's a 72-hour process, and it's a high hydration. What's all this mean? Well, it creates a lot of fluffiness and air in the dough, so it's not as nearly as heavy as it looks.
Mhm.
It's not. It's going to look like, oh, it's this heavy bread, but the way we do it, the way I was taught by Donatella actually, was you let it sit for 3 days and the air bubbles form and it just makes this nice, light, airy dough that is just it's like a pillow.
I was about to say it's
And
very
doesn't
pillowy.
feel
That was my
like,
first impression of it.
yeah, and that's what we go for. There's a place in Brooklyn that Joseph Zolfo brought me to and some friends to L&B Spumoni Gardens.
Hmm.
And it changed my whole approach on pizza. It was that good. And
Wow.
they're famous for their Sicilian pies.
Okay.
And the first time I went there, it was like, I was like, what am I eating? I've never had anything like this in my life. And that's the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. So that's what we
Okay.
try and do.
Well, for those who do come to join for St. Joseph's Day, definitely got to stop by Mid-City and get a slice.
Yeah, we're open 7 days a week, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. and every day, man. And we are I'm very proud of what we do.
Mhm.
We're a quality You know, it's tough in a restaurant business because a lot of places have to make that decision between how do you get the best products at a price that we can sell it at, that we still make money, can still pay the team. You know, I mean, there's real financial decisions that have to be made. And we've put a lot of, myself and my management have put a lot of time and effort in working with our vendors to find, you know, what tomatoes are the best, what flour is the best, what cheese is the best. And what we do is we start there. And when we find a product we like, I'll give you a perfect example. We use Bianco di Napoli tomatoes. I think they're the best tomatoes you can get, period. When I went to Italy, the tomatoes there in Southern Italy are amazing. They're the best I've ever had. However, when I get them shipped to us here, it's not the same product. And I've had multiple brands, had some great people I've talked to who are based out of Italy, and they sent me their product from Puglia, from Naples, Campania to Sicily, and they're good. But the California tomatoes by Bianco di Napoli are the best. Rob di Napoli, his family's third generation, they came, I forgot the name of the town, but he invited me in October to go to the San Jose Italian Fest because he's very big into that. And he invited me up. He let me, we took a tour of the farm and everything. It was wonderful. And I got to go to San Jose's, they call it the littlest little Italy. And it was really cool. But his family moved. I asked him, I said, is your family, because we started talking about it, I said, just out of curiosity, I don't know if you guys know this, but after that lynching, about 30,000 Italians, mostly Sicilian, moved to the Bay Area after that. And so I asked Rob if that's how his family ended up in California, because it's such a far stretch. You know? He said, no, we came here for agriculture. And that's what his family's always done, is agriculture. And so when I asked him that, he was telling me about his involvement with the San Jose club. And another cool thing, I went to their event. One of the guys at their event I met came to New Orleans, and he's coming around St. Joseph's Day and wants to go see the Alders. And he came to the pizzeria 2 weeks later. I mean, how great is that?
Yeah,
that's incredible.
I got to see Tessa Rachi play out there. They invited her out there. I got to see her play at their event. So again, that was just, I happened to have a tomato wholesaler who I thought had the best tomatoes work with him so that we could get the price that I could serve it for, you know, and it took a lot of work. And he was very grateful. I was very grateful. Our vendors happy. Everybody's happy. And I think we get the best product you can buy. And I knew this. I used his tomatoes actually in New York. And at the time, the only restaurant that had his product east of the Mississippi was an Italian place I ran in Brooklyn. And that's how I knew about his product. And to even bring it closer to home, David Greco is the one who introduced me to Rob so that I could call him and figure out how to get his product in Louisiana. And according to Rob di Napoli, I was the first one to have their product in Louisiana.
Wow.
And then same thing with our flour. We use an unbromated, unbleached flour. And it's a very high quality flour. And people don't realize, if you do the research, if you talk to these companies, they're proud of their products. They want you to use them. So you know, we had a good working relationship, and we were able to get it so that I can get the best quality ingredients and serve it at a very competitive price. And I'm very proud of that because it took a lot of work to make sure that we can do that so everyone's happy. And our guests, you know, don't get just somebody going to buy an expensive ingredient, charging them, you know, a ridiculous amount, and then say, well, we got the best ingredients. Well, if you work hard and talk to the people who are selling it, they want to sell their product.
Exactly.
You know, we deal with Bonnie cheese. That's a great Italian American story. They've got Bonnie family. Half of them stayed in Italy. The other half came to Wisconsin to get that cheese in the American market.
Brilliant.
That's a cool story. And so there's a lot of these that, just being in the pizza space, that I get to know and learn about, which to me is, you know, that historical reference is pretty cool because it's the same stories. When I went out to San Jose, these guys are third and fourth generation Californians who still do, they still go to their social club that their grandfather started because they had 25 guys from that town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's killing me. I can't remember the name of the town there. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, again, goes back to how do you honor people you've never met who sacrificed everything for you?
Yeah.
That's a
Keep
great
that tradition.
question.
It's fun. It's not hard. It's fun. We get the good part.
Definitely. I mean, that's quite honestly, that's what's motivated, I think, Lawrence and I, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing in Louisiana, me here in Florida with the podcast is just perpetuating the legacy that our ancestors gave us, really, and that sacrifice that they made.
Yeah. And it's also a way of, because we don't live in those areas where, you might have 10 relatives living in the same city. It's also a way of keeping our current family together,
Mm-hmm.
knowing certain times out the year, you got to be here.
Yeah,
I never
for
missed an
sure.
Italian when I lived in New York. I'm like, I'm not missing that.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of New York, and while we were talking about pizza,
Yeah.
just to tie this all together. So, Tony, something that I have heard, and I've been in New York before, but everybody says that the key to great pizza in New York is that it's all about the water. When you came back to New Orleans, like, what did that look like for you?
So when I was in the process of moving from New York back to New Orleans, I had access to a mixer. So I would make dough with a buddy of mine. And it never came out like I wanted. And the only difference was the water. So now I've heard that a lot. Now, the one thing I tell people, I said, I heard that all the time. I didn't do much science behind it, much research behind it. But one of the things that I would tell people, I'm like, well, look, I'm in New Orleans. If I need a fry cook, I had friends. We were all in high school working at poor boy shops and seafood restaurants. By the time I was 17, we could fry shrimp and boil crawfish. And up in New York, though, a lot of those same 15 and 16-year-old jobs are at the local pizzeria down the street. So I was working with people that were 23, 24, and they've been doing this for 8 years. So I always said, it's experience. It's just, they grew up doing it. They know how to do it. They know what it takes. Well, when I started making the dough here, and then I would go back to New York, and I would go back to the pizza shops I managed, and because I still have a great relationship with them. The only difference was the water. And I said, okay, now I have to look into it. And what I found was the difference in pH between New Orleans and New York is significant. New Orleans is a very hard water. New York water, I believe, comes from the Catskills, and the pH is almost neutral. It's like 7.3. So we had to get that down. And what that does, that helps in the gluten formation and the fermentation process. So when you have that neutral water, or almost neutral, it helps with the gluten being able to form and giving you that nice, crispy texture, but it's also soft at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's like making bagels too. And every New Yorker that comes to that shop and they find that out, the first thing they ask is, are you going to start making bagels soon? No.
Look, my brother-in-law is from Long Island, born and raised in New York. And that was his biggest thing because he lived in Louisiana for a little bit. They just moved back. And he was like, the pizza's not the same and the bagels aren't the same. And he was like, it's the water. He kept saying that. Unfortunately, we never got he wasn't able to try your pizza. I think he would have been a convert.
Well, that is a scientific fact. I mean, when I started reading about it, and then because you go on any municipality's website and see what their water content is, magnesium, all that stuff. And when I look at the difference between New Orleans and New Orleans, being that they were older cities, I thought they would be kind of the same. They weren't even close. So we worked with a local water company who was able to, we have a tank in the middle of our restaurant, or not in the middle of the restaurant, but in the middle of the kitchen in the restaurant. And it provides us with that, with a reverse osmosis, and provides us with the specific settings we want. And it definitely adds to it. What people don't realize is that water is the second biggest ingredient in pizza making outside of flour.
It's brilliant.
It's a beautiful balance of art and science.
Yeah,
make
and
the
that's what I
pizza.
think attracted me to it, was the fact that it's not just a recipe. You got to change it if you want to do it right, depending on the temperature outside. Matter of fact, when I started making the Sicilians, I was trying to do it the same way I did in New York. The final product was great, but it would take me 3 hours or so to do it, just to make the dough, because the humidity is so hot. The insulation on the buildings weren't as good as I had in New York. So the percentage of water I was using was so difficult to deal with. My staff is like, "Well, how do we make these?" I'm like, "I don't know yet."
I don't know yet. We're gonna
I
find
don't know
out.
yet. I know how to get it. Once I get it out the mixer and get it into the cooler, I know what to do from there a couple of days later. However, it took about 2 months. We had to modify it. And then look, I was thinking today, now that I think our winter is pretty much done, they'll be in about 3 to 4 weeks. We'll have to change the recipe a little bit of what we're doing,
Do you have to change how you make it at in different seasons due to humidity,
Well,
due to
we'll
heat?
change the dough process making. Yes,
Oh,
for sure.
okay.
Yeah, if you're doing pizza right, I think there are a lot more places in New Orleans doing pizza right now than there's ever been. I'd be willing to bet not one of them. I mean, you always have a baseline of what you want, but when it gets 95 and the humidity's 98, you don't know how long your flour has been sitting on your delivery truck. Maybe it's been absorbing the moisture in the air, so you get it. You got to lessen the water in it, things like that. So there definitely is some tweaking that is done throughout the seasonal changes, of course. Yeah.
Well, I do want to ask you this, because we're really wanting to get people to show up for St. Joseph's Day, but just to visit New Orleans throughout the year. There's so much going on,
And eat your pizza.
and of course eat your pizza.
There is. Look, my advice to anyone coming from out of town is do a little research. Look outside of the French Quarter. The French Quarter is great. You don't go to New York and not go to Times Square. But when you get out of Times Square and go into the neighborhoods, that's when you find some really hidden gems that just do everything right, from customer service to whatever product it might be, whether it's a restaurant, an ice cream shop, or whatever. But I would definitely put, places like Angelo Mercado's, which are one and only, on your list if you're coming in for that. I would also, our parade this year is March 28th, which is a week later than usual. So I hope there are still some St. Joseph altars around. If not, we'll have one made the day of the parade that you can see before the parade starts rolling. So people can take a look at that, because that's a very unique New Orleans Sicilian tradition. You got to get a muffalata. There's so many good ones too. But I would say look for places outside the French Quarter that, that you might not, that you've heard of, and see if you can make it there. I mean, I've been, I hate naming places because I always feel like I'm going to forget something, but probably to a half a dozen different Italian restaurants in the last, just this year alone. And I got to tell you that they're all good. I mean, they've been so good. Impastadas to Moscas to Vincent's. I mean, they're just really always on point, man. And they're great places. The families are there. The families are there. Irene's. There's, just so many things. But I would look outside the quarter, go to the quarter, enjoy it. It's wonderful. But look at other places that you might not have on your radar. There's some great information. There's someone on our website or on our Facebook. I apologize, but they did a great guide. I don't know if you guys saw it. They just put it on our Facebook for anybody coming in for the parade.
Oh, wonderful. I would definitely have to share that.
Yeah, I'm going to try and find it. Whoever, I wish I could give this person credit, because they did just a great job of putting some places on there and also highlighting businesses. And they took their time and really did a great job. I'll send it to you guys and see.
Yeah, definitely.
We'd be happy to share that.
So, Tony, if with any parting words that you want to give to people who are coming in for San Giuseppe.
If you're coming in for San Giuseppe, the thing that I would hope you would take away from this is important, not just because we're having fun. It's important for us to keep a culture our heritage going. And this should not be a 1-year thing. We want to make it an annual event for everyone that comes.
Mhm.
And if there is something missing, if there is something that you have questions about, please, through our website, our Facebook pages, Instagram, whatever your social media choice is, ask us. We'd love to help you. We'd love to get you involved. We're an organization that does volunteer work. That's something that this year, really going in after the parade, have already discussed. How do we get more opportunities? Because a lot of our members want to volunteer. That's what makes a club special, is helping out the community.
Yeah.
And so our club is going to start doing that. I would love to have the St. Expedite say, hey, we're going to volunteer at this shelter, or whatever it might be, in June. Do any guys want to come up? Let's do it, man. Let's let our footprint be known.
Definitely.
Amen.
But always, I think for any club to grow, if someone is a member or has an idea or question, open lines of communication always are there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Tony, we thank you for taking the time to be on the episode today. It was a treasure trove of information, and I know those who tune in for this episode and for the one with Ashley and Juliana, where they're going to have a lot to do come St. Giuseppe.
Yeah. Well, it was great to be here. I really enjoy it and look forward to seeing you guys very soon.
Likewise,
Awesome.
This was a treat.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Well,
guys.
this has been the Bada Bing Bayou podcast. My name is Patrick Ross Campese.
And I'm Lawrence Joseph in Graphia.
Ciao, y'all.
Y'all come back now.